Cindy. Budget. Does anyone have any comments on that? Okay, with none, we'll move on to the district mission, vision, and values. Vice Chair Richardson, you want to read those?
I'm happy to, thank you. Our mission, educating each student to the highest standards while motivating them to reach their fullest potential and graduating them to be college, career, and life ready. Our vision statement, our schools are a place where children belong. Each student is known by name, strength, and need, and provided the education and opportunities to achieve success. Our values are striving for equity, inclusion, and belonging, celebrating diversity, engaging the community, supporting the whole child, and promoting and achieving academic excellence.
Thank you. Next, we have consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of routine items such as previous board minutes, personnel actions, routine financial transactions. Normally, there's little or no discussion of these items. Anyone have any comments on that? Or we'll accept a motion to approve.
Chair, I'll move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Do you have a second? Okay. Motion by Director Aparicio, seconded by Director Vaught. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Any abstain? Ayes have it, motion passes. Next, we have the board action calendar review for February and March. Any comments or on that? All right. Next, we have student staff recognition. And we'll start off with a performance from Dry Hollow Student Choir. I'll- you for that. That was great. Next up, we have the Dallas High School cheer team. And we'll turn it over to A.D. Gross.
Good evening, Superintendent Bernal, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to come before you tonight. I came here to offer recognition for the Dallas High Riverhawks cheer team that placed second in the state cheer competition a week ago last Friday. I'd like to read off the names of the members of the team, starting with Coach Vassar, Coach Adams, and then Caitlin, Laney, Lydia, Aris, Alexia, Jamie, Lily, Noe, Molly, Olivia, Alice, Ariel, and Keely. Congratulations, ladies. Great job. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and congratulations, ladies. That was a great year.
Just want to say again, congratulations to the Riverhawk athletes. I think this is probably, I don't know how, I lost track, but the story tradition of our Riverhawk cheer team is awesome to see. And then bringing home hardware every time, whether it's different athletes or coaches, even now that we have a new coach, it's just great to see them to be able to continue that great tradition that lives in the Dalles. So congrats to the team again.
All right, next up, we have celebrating school counselors and social emotional learning assistants. I will turn it over to Stephanie.
If I can figure out how to work this new microphone. Those are hard acts to follow. Man, I kind of wish I would have gone first. So this month, in recognition of National Counselor and SELA Appreciation Week, SELAs are our social emotional learning assistants, for those who don't know that acronym. We just wanted to take a moment to express our deep gratitude for the incredible work that these individuals do each and every day inside of our schools. Their dedication, compassion, and unwavering support make an immeasurable difference in the lives of our students, families, and our staff alike. In a world where challenges seem to mount by the day, these individuals stand as beacons of hope and strength, offering guidance and solace to those who need it most. Whether it's helping students navigate through personal struggles, providing crucial emotional support, or fostering a positive and inclusive school environment, their impact is profound and enduring. Counselors, your role extends far beyond mere academic guidance. You are mentors, advocates, and confidants, shaping the social and emotional landscape of our school community and our future. Your tireless efforts make our schools a better place, and your impacts resonate far beyond the confines of these walls. Please know that your work is valued, appreciated, and cherished by all those who have the privilege of knowing and working with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph. Next up, we have student representative to the board report, Yamira and Caleb. Do you have anything?
Okay, I have a few things to mention regarding the high school. So today our wrestling returns to state wrestling meet. Our Alexander de la Torre and Josh Brackenbury head to state for wrestling. Both boys and girls basketball teams head to postseason. Boys head to North Marion this Friday at 6 p.m. for tip-off, and girls head to Staten at 5 p.m. Spring sports, tennis, softball and basketball, golf, and track and field begin this upcoming Monday. The Dallas High School will host Fly Up Day for 8th graders this Friday, which is tomorrow. 8th graders will come in around 12:30 and get a chance to meet teachers and get a sense of the school before their upcoming freshman year. They will have around 20-minute classes and get to walk around the school. To lightly mention, there has been some concerns and debates about the right within the school about recent requests for changes of early release getting taken away due to the hours we lost due to winter week. Without getting too deep into it, because Mayette will talk more about it, concerns with the ability to pick up younger siblings has risen as this change only applies to high schoolers. I know a lot of my friends are responsible to pick up their siblings in middle school and elementary school, and I myself used to be reliant on an older sibling, and I think this will heavily impact a lot of families, as well with the fact that this brings up the risk of young children being left alone at home if they find a way to get home, because they won't have an adult or supervision available. As well, a student opinion matters. Mental health concerns have risen. I know a lot of my friends and students who use the early release as a debrief and ability to catch up on work, speak to teachers, catch up on even extracurriculars and community service hours with the time they got from early release. And I know a lot of staff are worried about losing staff meeting and PLC time to help struggling students, and it also cuts staff communication time. So I hope this is something you can take into consideration before passing the early release act. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Next, we have building student representative reports. We'll start with the Dallas High School. Mayette Winwood. Is she here?
Okay, hello, my name is Mayette Winwood, and I'm a senior at the Dallas High School, and right now I'm the current ASB Executive President. We're more than halfway through our trimester, and winter sports are coming to an end, so here's a little bit of a wrap-up for this trimester without repeating too much of what Yamari just said. So, as she already mentioned, we're entering postseason for many sports, and they qualify for state, so we're really looking forward to see how basketball, ski, wrestling all do this weekend. And we're super proud of our swimmers and cheerleaders for finishing on such a strong season. And we're super excited for spring sports to start on February 26th, which is next Monday. Just a few things that we have going on at the high school. Fly Up Day. We're looking forward to bringing in future Riverhawks and getting them excited for high school. The TAG students are also going on a field trip to the Oregon Ballet Theater to see Peter Pan, and honestly, I forgot what day, so don't ask me. Tomorrow. State testing has also been happening for juniors the past few weeks, and it will continue for a few more. And then a few things that we've just been doing in ASB is we just planned a human kindness week, and we had that last week. The week focused on being kind to yourself and others. We had a community cleanup, self-care bingo, free donuts, and more. And then our next big event is coming up in March, and it's Riverhawks on the Run, which is basically a scavenger hunt that will get students out and working creatively in groups with whoever as they compete for a pizza party. So it'll be lots of fun. And then a little bit underprepared to talk about it, but we'll just go into kind of what Yamari was saying about early release. But we kind of, as ASB, we kind of worked together and we kind of came up with a solution, and we did some math. Well, not a solution. I would just say we're proposing another idea for how we can make up our hours in this trimester. And I'm just going to read it off just a little bit, just 1 second. Okay, so we looked at what the Oregon Department of Education says, and it says that students need to be in school with instructional time for 990 hours each school year, which means that each trimester there needs to be about 330 hours. So let's get into the math. For the first trimester, we were in class for 56 days, and 12 of those were early release and 44 were full days. There were no unexpected days off or late starts, so the math is pretty simple. On Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, each class is 73 minutes long, and on Wednesdays, classes are 57 minutes long. So in 1 week, a student received 349 minutes of class time, which is 5 hours and 48 minutes for one class. So basically, for a whole trimester of one class, you'd get 63.93 hours exactly. That hour represents the amount of time in one class for the whole trimester. That's what I already said. So if we just multiply it by 5 for the amount of classes, then we'll get 319.65, which is the amount of time spent at school for that, like all of those classes for the whole trimester. So we need to add on TAT days because that is a built-in time of our day of schedule for instructional time. Sorry, that's kind of confusing. But there were 44 full days in this trimester, which means that there were 44 days of TAT. TAT is 30 minutes long, so now we just multiply 30 by 44 and divide that number by 60 to get the amount of hours, which is 22 hours. So adding that to the 319.65 from how many hours we were in actual class for the first trimester, we get 341.65, which is 341 hours and 39 minutes of instructional time during the first trimester. This includes all scheduled breaks, holidays, and advisory schedules. I also want to mention that we had 1 half day during homecoming week, but that doesn't affect this because we're well over the 330 hours that we would need to be for that first trimester. Now, trimester 2, it gets a little bit complicated, but we had a total of 60 scheduled school days. 47 were full days and 13 were early release. Tri 2 has one extra 5-day week added as just like a safety buffer for potential snow days. We had 8 snow days, 2 late starts, and 7 advisory days. So taking this all into account when we did our calculations. So just as before, it's the same amount of time for early release and a full day, 57 minutes early release, 73 full day. So we, without taking into consideration any of the days that we had off that were unplanned, we come to a total of 69.53 total hours of school. So now we're going to subtract the 8 snow days, which was the equivalent of 9.73 hours of missed school. And then we get 59.8 hours. Then with the 2 late starts, which set us back 16 minutes each to a total of 32 minutes, and the 8 advisory days, which set us back 48 minutes altogether, then when you add those together, that gets 1.3 hours. So we're just going to subtract that from the 59.8, which gets us to 58.5 hours. So that is the amount of hours spent in one class for the entire second trimester. So when we figure out how many hours we were in every class for that entire trimester, we multiply that number by 5, and we get 292.5 hours. So again, we just need to add TAT back into that schedule, and by adding that with the same math that I used before, we get to 316. 316 hours, that is how much time we spent in instructional class for trimester 2, which means that we obviously have to add some time back in. I propose that we change our ASB, and I propose that we change our last 2 early release Wednesdays, which would be next Wednesday, the 28th, and then March 6th, I believe, to full days. This would get us to 325.5 hours. So we only need a few more hours to make up to get to 330. I propose that we reach this by changing the teacher workday at the end of Tri 2 on March 8th to a full school day. This would make March 8th the last day of the trimester. We would then move the teacher workday to Monday the 11th, making the first day of Tri 3 March 12th. If we do this, then we'll be able to get to a total of 331.6 hours. And don't worry, by moving Tri 3 back 1 day won't affect the schedule either. There would be roughly 325 hours total in all 5 classes for the whole trimester plus TAT, which adds about 20 hours, which brings trimester 3 to 345 hours. By following this plan, we are meeting all of our trimester goals, as well as meeting our yearly goal, as we reach 1,018.2 hours. So that's just another thing to think about and take it into consideration as you, vote on the act or whatever you call that again. Okay, thank you and have a good night.
All right, thank you for that. Next up, we have Innovations Academy, Eleanor Young and Riley Stocks.
Good? Okay. At Innovations Academy, we have a lot of end of trimester planning and end of the school year planning.
Next week, Saturday, March 2nd, Innovations will be hosting a Spring Bazaar where we will have community vendors who will be selling arts and crafts, foods, and plants, and Innovation students will also have booths, fundraising for school events.
The fundraisers will help us fund field trips for middle school and high school students, in addition to school-wide projects.
We are currently planning an end of trimester celebration for the last day of the trimester to celebrate the school's hard work.
Our site council is currently creating a school mascot and building school pride.
All right, thank you. Next, we have the Dalles Middle School, Nathan Carson.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nathan Corson, and I am the Student Council President at the Dalles Middle School. It has been a long time since we've seen each other. These past months have been loaded with fun events. Earlier this month, we had a red carpet dance, which was well attended and incredibly fun. Several parents came to chaperone and help us out. Shout out to Mr. Irving and Mrs. Brackenberry for our amazing backpack security. We had donuts, Capri Suns, and even pizza, which sold out fast. Students loved the photo booth machine and told us this was their favorite dance of the year. I wanted to take some time this evening to share other events with y'all that we have been having here at TDMS. In the fall, we had a harvest dance with 3 costume contest winners. We have had multiple assemblies this year, a BMX assembly, pep assemblies, sports team recognition, staff versus student dodgeball, teachers playing amazing music on the guitars, and a scavenger hunt involving the Grinch and Santa Claus. Throughout the year, we have had a very special person, Miss Cat, running our student store and bringing smiles to students all year long. Next month, we are going to have a pep assembly and spirit week. We will keep you updated on all the spirit days at the upcoming board meetings. In the last week, we have been selling friendship grams and handed them out during homerooms on Valentine's Day. The students were very excited to see what we had in store for them. They could choose to buy a Valentine duck, chocolate hugs and kisses, or a heart for their locker. They could buy it for themselves or for a friend. I want to give an honorable mention to our winter sports, boys basketball, girls basketball, and wrestling. We also have some amazing after-school clubs like robotics, where multiple teams have been dominating the competition, chess club, and of course, OBOB. Have an amazing evening.
Thank you. Next, we have Chenoweth Elementary School, Paola Ornillas and Camilla Barajas Valdenovinos.
Hola, soy Paola de Chenoweth.
Hello, I am Camila from Chenoweth.
Gracias a Diane Wynn Elledge por acompañarnos en nuestro baile de quinto grado este mes. Fue un poquito caótico, Muchos niños de quinto grado intentaron hacer breakdance en la pista.
Thank you, Board Member Dana Wynn Elledge, for chaperoning our fifth grade dance this month. It was a bit chaotic. Many fifth grade boys attempted breakdancing on the floor.
El tema de este mes es la honestidad. Uneres a nosotros todos los viernes a las 8 a.m. en nuestro gimnasio para ver nuestros premios a la honestidad por los estudiantes.
This month's theme is honesty. Join us every Friday at 8 a.m. in our gym to see our Student Honesty Awards.
Nuestro ASB está trabajando en los planes del Día de la Tierra. El señor Taylor en la escuela secundaria tiene algunos estudiantes que nos ayudan a organizar una tarde divertida de actividades. Unes a nuestros el 22 de abril a la 1 p.m. para las actividades del Día de la Tierra. El año pasado, el señor Aprecio ayudó a hacer comedores para pájaros con botellas plásticas.
Our ASB is working on Earth Day plans. Mr. Taylor at the high school has some leadership students who are going to help us put on a fun afternoon of activities. Join us April 22nd at 1 p.m. for the Earth Day activities. Last year, Mr. Aprecio helped make bird feeders out of plastic bottles.
¿Sabías que tenemos un nuevo programa después de escuela? Es un Maker Club los jueves después de clases de 2:40 a 4:30 p.m. En este momento, 25 estudiantes están haciendo paleteras con duct tape con la señora McCord con OSU, el señor Manny, 4 estudiantes de la escuela secundaria. Esperamos que no los rompen el dinero. ¿Sabías cuánto costó el pórtico para convertir nuestra biblioteca en el espacio Maker? $21,000. Gracias al señor Randall por obtener este beca.
Do you know we have a new after-school program? It's a Makers Club Thursday after school from 2:40 to 4:30 p.m. Right now, 25 students are making duct tape wallets with Mrs. McCord from OSU Extensions, Mr. Manny, and 4 high school volunteers. Let's hope they don't rip their money. Guess how much the grant cost to convert our library into a makerspace? $21,000. Shout out to Mr. Randall for writing a grant for us.
¿Viste algunos corazones de Chenoweth en nuestra ciudad? Los estudiantes hicieron corazones que representaban al amor para ellos. Muchos negocios de la ciudad los colgaron en sus ventanas.
Did you see any Chenoweth hearts around town? Students made hearts that represented love to them. Many businesses around town hung them up in their windows.
Gracias, Dr. Bernal, para no haber clases nuevamente el viernes pasado. Escuchamos que nuestros maestros aprendieron mucho, halagar que nosotros.
Thank you, Dr. Bernal, for no school again last Friday. We hear our teachers learned a lot, just like us.
Nuestro chiste del día es, ¿cómo pasa Superman sobre el multitud?
¿Cómo?
Con su permiso.
Our joke of the day is, why do beats always win?
Why?
Because they are unbeatable.
Este es todo de Chenoweth.
That's all for Chenoweth, and as we say every day at school, join us if you know the chant.
Together we are better. Juntos somos mejores.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Dry Hollow Elementary School with Jackson Timmer and Lydia Leducer.
Good evening, District 21 board members and community. Thank you for once again inviting us here to speak to you all about all the wonderful things that have been happening at Dry Hollow this past month. Let's get started, Lydia.
In early February, we had our Word of the Month assembly. Miss Stewart's class taught us all about self-control. Here's a quote we like about self-control, and we want to share it with you. Self-control is knowing when you can, but deciding you won't.
Each Tuesday morning, starting this past month, several students have been boarding the walking school bus at Gateway Church and making their way up to Dry Hollow. The fare is cheap, it's free, and it's a great way to spend some morning time with your friends as well as get some exercise.
The Dry Hollow Student Council recently held a fundraiser for the American Heart Association. They sold cutout hearts. $343 was raised for the association. This money will be used to purchase defibrillators, which Mr. Kaiser might need if he joins the walking school bus sometime, as well as to help pay for classes in CPR.
Several classes are competing each week for 3 prestigious awards given to classes that walk quietly in the hall, keep their rooms clean, and are courteous in the lunchroom. These awards are called the Golden Shoe Award, the Golden Dustpan Award, and the Golden Tray Award. Mrs. Hamill's class has won the most awards so far this year. Mr. Kaiser is hoping that Mrs. Lloyd will add a Your Golden Age Award so his class might be able to win since he's in his golden years. Mrs. Lloyd says she'll see about that.
Class pictures were taken on Tuesday. Several students were surprised to see how much they've grown over the past 5 months. They were also surprised to see how much their teachers have aged over the past 5 months.
The students at Dry Hollow would like to thank you for adding 2 more days to the academic calendar because of the snow. That is, they'd like to say thank you, but, well, you know how it is.
It's been nice this month seeing several of the district office people roaming our halls at Dry Hollow and visiting the classrooms. It's great getting to know them, and it's also a great way to keep the teachers on their feet when they are teaching us. Thanks for stopping by.
Of course, we are all counting down the days until spring break. In case you're wondering, there are 19 school days until spring break. My teacher has a sign on his wall that says, and I quote, "Time is passing. Are you?" Maybe we should be making better use of our time rather than counting down the days until spring break. Maybe we should be considering how many opportunities we have to learn before spring break comes. Yeah, that's it. Maybe.
Before we go, we'd like to leave you with a school joke. What do you call a teacher who forgets to do attendance each day?
The answer is absent-minded.
Once again, thanks for listening to us and letting us tell you about what's been happening at our school. Have a good evening and a better tomorrow. We're gone.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Colonel Wright Elementary with Faith Miramontes. Okay, so we'll move on to staff reports, D21 Education Association and Northwest Education Support Professionals representatives.
Okay, I got it. Sorry, I asked if I remember how to turn this on. She told me to push the button. We make a great team. All right, good evening, Dr. Vernal. We're not as funny as those Dry Hollow kids, but I'm trying. Good evening, Dr. Vernal, North Wasco County School Board of Directors, members of the audience that are present in body and via Zoom. My name is Jody Ketchum, and I have the honor to proudly serve as the president of D21 Education Association, which represents the licensed staff of our district, including Mosier Community School. I am a second grade teacher who has served at North Wasco for almost 24 years. This is Sylvia Brock, the co-president of North Wasco ESPs, sitting with me for our joint report this evening from both of our unions. As the board knows, we feel strongly that you have amazing administrators working for our district. AJ and Mairead are working miracles at Chenoweth Elementary. Luke and Kim are making some revolutionary moves at Colonel Wright. Autumn and Kevin, with Kevin's help, is healing staff and moving mountains. Kurt and Phil are holding steadily strong and working their tails off. Donna at IA is working so hard to have a safe place for some of our most talented and unique students. Ryan and Julie doing one of their toughest jobs that so few can do here at the Dalles Middle School. Dr. Bernal continues to actively work together with us to help find resolutions to the significant issues our district faces. I can cite many instances that she has taken action after we have brought concerns to her and has implemented our solutions. We look forward to this cooperation, and we are grateful for this. We are grateful for all of our current admin. As you all know, we recognize that we can accomplish more in collaboration with our admin than we can alone. Every month, we ask the board and Dr. Bernal to be more present in our buildings, and we would like to thank Dr. Bernal and several of you board members who have made an effort to be more present. Tonight, we are speaking to you on behalf of our staff and imploring you to take immediate action to keep all of our staff and students safe. As I stated back in March of 2023, we feel very strongly that disrupted learning needs to be one of the highest priorities for building and district level administrators and the school board. Some of what you hear tonight will be a little bit of a repeat of that month's report, because while we have made some strides, it is nearly not enough. Many of the recommendations we made almost a year ago are still excellent, viable options that we feel must be pursued. We have all heard from people concerned about disrupted learning at many of our board meetings this year. The heartbreaking and impactful stories that you have heard on this topic of disrupted learning are just the tip of the iceberg. We could submit reports from so many more staff, but this quick presentation would turn into 8 hours. We implore our board members to reach out to parents and staff to hear the concerns of all. Next month, we are submitting yet again the OEA report, A Crisis of Disrupted Learning, for your review. This impactful report came out of a year-long collaboration process between OEA legislators and educators in 2019. OEA is working to update this, and we will bring it back to you when this happens. In the meantime, this report is even more relevant today than when I brought it to most of you a year ago. I will reference the suggestions in this report more next month. Currently, our students and staff are in crisis, and we need immediate help. The disrupted learning environment that our students and staff are still enduring puts our core value of safety at risk. The students who are engaging in disruptive behaviors are communicating to us that they do not feel safe in their environment. We implore you to listen to our students and our staff. The behaviors we are seeing include verbal abuse, such as screaming, threatening, name-calling, and using profanity. Person-to-person abuse, spitting, hitting, kicking, and using objects to be abusive. Weaponizing the classroom, such as overturning furniture, using supplies in a physically abusive manner, and throwing objects. Destruction of property, such as ripping things off of walls, graffiti, destroying bathrooms, and destroying technology and books. Across all of our schools and grade levels at North Wasco, the disrupted learning environment continues to be a top concern for our members. We are not able to continue in this state of unrest. It is not sustainable nor ethical for our staff and students to not have their basic need for safety met. Please help your employees help our students by providing any immediate relief you can to find solutions that allow us to get back to the important work of safely educating our students. Each and every student of our district deserves the support and resources and educational experiences that meet their needs. In North Wasco, we do not have clear and strict implementation of district school protocols in the event of these disruptions. We don't have clear matrices for principals and staff to follow at every school. If we do have either of these, they are not made available to all staff. At North Wasco, we have a program called Larkspur that can serve K-5. For students to access this, you must have insurance and be approved. This program could have a functional capacity of 8 to 10 students when fully staffed. We have another program, thanks to Dr. Bernal listening to us, that our students need more avenues of support, called the TLC, that can serve K-5. For students to access this, they yet again must have insurance and be approved. This program could have a functional capacity of 8 to 12 if fully staffed. Between the two programs, we could be serving 0.7% of our population, but are currently serving 0.2%. Did you notice the theme of both of these programs? That you must have insurance and be approved. What about those who do not have insurance or are not approved? Is this equitable for those students? Students who have an extremely high need of emotional support fall through our cracks. Our district is doing a disservice to them. Did you notice another theme of K-5? There is a huge hole for 6th to 8th graders. There are little to no resources for this population that I stated at last board meeting is a highly needy population. In closing, we are burning out. We are physically, emotionally, and mentally drained beyond belief. Here is one example of one classroom within this district. There are 24 students in this 2nd grade classroom, and while that may seem like a reasonable class size, I will explain why it is not. In this room, there are 2 students suspected to be on the spectrum of ASD, but have yet to go through the process of diagnosis. These 2 students are verbally and physically defiant of completing 80% of their work on a daily basis. There is another student with no public school history up until this year and is diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit disorder for those who don't know, and ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. This student is physically and or verbally abusive with other students daily and is verbally abusive to the teacher and other staff daily. There is another student who is verbally and physically defiant of completing 60+% of her work, but moved in from our district, so little is known yet as to why she is so oppositional.
Just one second. Point of order, Chair. Jody, I know that you're mindful, but I want you to be very, very careful in a small population of guarding the protection of our children's identity, okay? Especially when giving details.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like me to stop? Okay. Continuing on. In summation of this class, there are 92% of these students who need individualized attention every minute of every day. So let me say that again, 92% of this population, of this little population, as you stated. And I wish this, excuse me, in 62 days, these students have had 78 behavior referrals. That is 1.3 referrals a day. I wish that this was a rarity, but we are seeing more and more of these kids who need more than our district can offer. This is extremely exhausting for a teacher who was also suffering from sporadic migraines and began suffering from debilitating migraines that made her throw up at times and end up in the ER. She is now on FMLA to seek treatments to get her healthy again. In her absence, the students have had 14 referrals. That is 1.6 a day. 92 behavior referrals for 71 days. Yes, this teacher is me. And with 23 years under my belt, I still went home every day to a son who asked me, "Why are you sad every day when you get home?" I felt like I had failed all 24 of my students. And then I realized just last night, upon talking to other educators, that we, as a district, have failed these students. As I mentioned, we do not offer enough for our students, and we will be back next month with suggestions. In the meantime, I am hoping to return part-time next week if our HR department allows for my return. We must do better for our students and our staff. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that, Jody. Next up, we have School Board Subcommittee Report, Scholarship Committee, Director Winelage.
Nothing to report.
Community Outreach Team, Director Aparicio.
No update tonight. Our meeting is actually next week on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. Wellness Committee, Director Richardson.
I do not have a Wellness Committee report.
Equity Committee, Director Winelage.
No report this month.
Wasco County Forest Collaborative, Director Nelson.
Yeah, I have a report. So the February meeting of the Wasco County Forest Collaborative centered around a fire history study review of the national forest lands we're responsible for on the east side of Mount Hood National Forest. It was presented by Dr. Keela Harmon. The study covered such things as high severity fire effects and dominant conifer species. We also reviewed a dendrochronological study of fire scar and reconstruction study. So basically reading tree rings and how fires impacted historically all the way back into the 1800s. So you can actually see the sequence of events and the timing of them and the severity. And that's real data that we can use to plan for future management of the forest. Some takeaways were higher elevation forests that historically burned at high severity are burning now less frequently, but in larger high severity patches. The data shows a significant increase in high severity fire effects in lower elevation and where the drier forest types are. Species composition has shifted, especially in dry forest. So this would be shifting from the early 1900s, late 1800s. In the dry forest where Douglas fir and grand fir are now common in areas formerly dominated by ponderosa pine. We also worked on a document called Zones of Agreement, which outlined processes and statements that we can agree on between the Forest Collaborative and the Forest Service. And let's see, so examples of that, a couple. In the dry forest, the warm dry zone, fire suppression and past management has led us to a significant increase in density and shifted species composition towards shade-tolerant species. Landscape scale treatments are needed to restore healthy fire-adapted forest. Treatments should favor the retention of Oregon white oak and ponderosa pine and remove the grand fir and white fir. Retention of some of the Douglas fir will be sustainable on these sites. Historically, wildfires would have created small openings less than 5 acres in warm dry zones. These openings provide important early seral habitat. That's after a fire event, the first species that regrow, that's what that means. And so what comes into a destroyed forest after something like a large fire event? And forage for diverse range of wildlife species. So it's important to provide that habitat and the forage for wildlife species. Further prescriptions should integrate the creation of small openings to mimic the diversity of forest feral stages and conditions across the landscape. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next we have OSBA Legislative Policy Committee, Director Richardson.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try to be brief. The OSBA Legislative Policy Committee, as you know, it sets the OSBA's legislative priorities and principles, and top of that list is to promote adequate, predictable, and stable funding, followed closely by Protect the 2019 Student Success Act. During this short session, there are a few bills that propose tapping into the Act's money and modifying the corporate activities tax that funds it. Some of these bills at first read are well intended, but they lack the funding to support them. One is House Bill 4084, which would provide educational navigators to support foster kids, but House Bill 4084 is seeking $1 million from the statewide education initiatives account, which would reduce the Student Success Act funding. So education advocates and our lobbyists are wary of any bills that dilute the Act's support for schools. Another one is Senate Bill 1542, which would create a healthcare exemption in the corporate activities tax. and raise the minimum taxable amount from $1 million to $5 million. And both of those things would reduce the available funds for education by almost possibly hundreds of millions of dollars. So we're keeping a really close eye on that, even though it's a short session that can really erode our funding from the state. I'll give a final report at the next board meeting after the session closes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we have D21 Education Foundation. Director Nelson.
So at this meeting, I'll talk a little bit about our financial report and administrative report, and a couple of things about the Booster Club. So the financial report highlights are that we got a gift of $50,000, which was graciously accepted from Google. Say what? Oh. Fall Appeal has netted $6,887.49. Our total education foundation funds are now at a total healthy sum of $66,538.65. And on the fall campaign, raising money for the D21 Education Foundation, has brought in about 8,000. Rebecca's goal was 10,000. That's good. Tax receipt letters were sent out to all donors for the 2023 year. Rebecca, that's our administrative assistant, she spent hours during the holiday and snow days researching grant advance programs. So those are programs that we can look through to apply for grants to fund different aspects of our organization. And Rebecca's forming 3 different campaigns for that program: general operating support of about 15,000, mini grants support, and a hopeful program for a school-based health center, which would be a capital campaign. Rebecca would like more discussion on this last item. And she found about 30 grants that she can address in an introductory letter of interest. So she's working on that. On the car raffle of last fall, Candy will take responsibility. This is Candy Armstrong, our former superintendent. Candy will take responsibility for distributing raffle tickets to schools and businesses. 5,000 were printed. The Booster Club is making connections with the middle school and the high school. The drawing is in September. The cars will be shown and the tickets sold at a home game in the near future. A conversation needs to be scheduled to talk about establishing a health center at the Dallas High School. Doofer has a mobile unit and Hood River has a center. And Kurt, high school principal, has talked with Pat Sublette, the ESD superintendent. We have an account earmarked for health center. It's restricted for a fund for mental health services of $260,000 that can be used for this type of a project if we establish it in the future. Dr. Bernal said that she would follow up with Pat on this subject, and several community partners are interested in helping with this project, like One Community Health. And then I just want to make you aware of some of the Booster Club activities. Actually, just one of them. So on Friday, March 8th, the 2024 Riverhawk Gathering at the Readiness Center. It's a fundraiser for district athletics, and promoting so the Booster Club can promote our athletics. $45 per ticket. And so if you're interested in going to that, again, the date is Friday, March 8th at the Riverhawk, at the Readiness Center. That's it.
All right, thank you. Next, we have new business. We'll start out with the 2024-25 ESD Local Service Plan, and I will turn it over to Pat Sublette.
See the light. Well, Director Nelson, I feel your pain. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me tonight. This is our annual presentation of the local service plan. Through Columbia Gorge ESD, we are required by law to present the local service plan every year. And our funding comes in part from the state and from local taxes. 90% of our funding goes back to the districts we serve in the form of, depending on their ADMW. And so, of course, it's up to districts how they want their part of those dollars to come to them. And so I'm here tonight to talk to you about how those dollars come to North Wasco. And then also we provide a lot of different grants and different opportunities that I'll also just touch on very briefly. But that 90% of our funding that comes through of that, North Wasco, let me see, receives about 39% of that because you have 39% of the students. So that makes sense. And so what the services that we provide are everything from early intervention evaluations, and that for, I don't know why, but districts need to pay for the evaluations for early intervention themselves. And then the state funds early intervention services for children, but districts do pay for those evaluations. So part of the funding goes for those. Part of it goes for school psychology services. A large chunk goes for technology. So the ESD's tech department is housed here at the district, and they provide all of your tech services. And that means everything from technology direction to desktop support, systems administration, and then of course internet and connectivity. This year they're really, well, and last year also, but they're really starting to dig deeply into cybersecurity and make sure that we're on track to being well covered in that department as well. And so that's a good thing. And then also this year, well, we have a new Native American liaison, and she's been very dynamic, and that's been great. And then we provide the homeschool registration for people, or for the district as well. Some of the grant opportunities that we provide are through integrated guidance. We support districts and work between ODE and districts to help districts come up with good plans that get accepted and that kind of thing. We have the Early Learning Hub. STEM is, I love STEM because nobody knows what ESDs do, right? And so every time I say, well, you've never heard of us, but you've heard of STEM, and everybody's heard of STEM. And so that's how there's like, thank you, STEM. But our STEM program does a lot of work in the district as well as other districts. 21st Century is after school programming. That's through a grant that we have written the past 2 times that we've had it approved. And then migrant education is the other large program that we provide that is predominantly North Wasco. It is a regional program, or regional grant though. The other thing that we do is we run preschools, and we have 4 preschool classrooms. They're all completely full. And all of our classrooms are inclusive. That means we used to, a while ago, have classrooms just for children who were in EIECSE, and that stands for Early Intervention, Early Childhood Special Education. And now all of our classrooms are integrated. So one of our classrooms is a dual language immersion classroom. That classroom filled to capacity during COVID. So I'm sure if we could get the funding, we could support another one of those classrooms as well. All of our preschool classrooms do have bilingual assistance, as well as, so children are hearing Spanish and English in all of our classrooms. So Then some of the other smaller grants that we're doing are student safety and prevention, and then emergency operations planning. So Claire Rennett has been supporting Cindy and some of her amazing work that's been going on before Claire was on board, but we just rewrote that grant and submitted it yesterday to keep that funding coming. And then another new project that we've been doing for, I think, 2 years, maybe 3, is providing E-rate support for our districts. And we're able to do it at a pretty low cost. And so, so that's been a fun thing to kind of get into. E-rate's very specific, though, I have to say. But that's just to give you an overview of the services that we provide, and we're always here to support you in any way that we can. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions. Well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next, I would turn it over to Kara. Director Nelson, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Any abstain? Ayes have it, motion passes.
She said? Brenda, yes. She's here. Okay, well, I will let.
Hi. Are you able to see and hear me? Okay, I'm not sure I'm able to hear you. I heard a little bit.
We will listen to you first. It might be hard to, because it's kind of like a dual system thing.
Okay, yep, I can hear you now. Okay, well, I will get started. I guess, would you like me to share a screen, or do the board members have documents?
Would you like to go through it, and might be easier for you, so you have the page?
Yep, I will share my screen. All right. Well, let me know if you can't hear me or have other technical difficulties. I am going to start with our audit report. And the first thing that I think most people want to know about the audit report is whether the opinion was unmodified, or, as we used to say, clean. And it was. So we're doing a great job there. We have a clean opinion. That means that the financial statements as presented were reasonably presented in all material respects. So that's what we want to have. One of the things that we do as we conduct the audit is we take the numbers from management, and then what we do is we go out and try to get as much third-party evidence as we can. So, for example, if management says there's X dollars in the bank account, we'll go confirm that with the bank. So those are the kinds of things that we do in order to be able to give an opinion on the financial statement. So that's the assurance that you're looking for when you're engaging an auditor. I'm not going to go too far into depth with the report itself. There's a lot of reports. There's a lot of requirements when we audit financial statements of Oregon municipalities. The first is to conduct a financial audit. We also have some requirements to test compliance with certain laws and regulations. And then for this school district, because of the level of spending of federal funding, a whole other layer of compliance auditing, which is sort of a separate audit. We call that a single audit. That comes into play as well. So we end up having about 4 reports that we walk through with you, which I'm going to do. If at any time you need me to stop and have a question, please just let me know. So the first report, as I said, is on the financial statements, and it was an unmodified opinion. So that's what you're looking for. Our second report, the one that I can find, this is at the very back of the document. Looks like page 87, if you're looking at it from paper or a PDF. This is actually that first report that is for the federal program funding. So what we do is we follow some they're pretty prescribed rules about the feds say, you know, we take a look and we pick certain programs, we call them major programs, and those are what we audit. And so we don't have a lot of choices in that area. It's kind of like every big program has to be looked at every 3 years. So basically what we do is we look at those programs and then we provide an opinion on compliance with the federal programs. And so here you can see that, again, we have an unmodified opinion on the district's compliance with the federal programs that we tested. So again, that's what you're wanting. You're wanting to see that overall and materially that the district is in compliance with all of the requirements that are surrounding those federal funding. We do the same thing with that. We do a lot of testing to get that opinion, but that's basically what we do. There are a couple things that come up. One of the things that we have to look at as we're looking at federal programs is what they call internal controls over compliance. So that's the processes and policies and procedures that the district has in place to ensure they have compliance. And so there's a couple things that that we did note of that, which are some deficiencies in internal controls. And when we report deficiencies in internal controls, generally what we're seeing is we want to work with management in the district to put in some maybe sometimes very simple procedures to sort of avoid that in the future. And so that's kind of the nature of these is, okay, we noticed this in the course of our testing. Here's some ways you can address that so that that improves that process for the future. So we'll talk a little bit about those specifically findings in just a minute. This is the second report required when you have that federal program audit. And basically, this is the report where we have to impose governmental auditing standards on the audit. So it's a little bit, it's quite the same as our regular auditing, but there's some additional standards we have to follow and some reporting requirements as well. So this actual report doesn't really have an opinion, but it talks a little bit about the internal controls that we're going to talk about as well. So I am going to move on to what is called a schedule of findings and question costs. So this is a schedule that we're required to do whenever there's federal spending. Again, very prescribed. If you are looking to follow along, it is on page 95. Just gives you kind of a bite-sized information about that federal program audit. So first, we're talking about there was some internal control findings over financial reporting. Also some internal control findings, small ones over federal programs. And then also that our opinion, however, was unmodified, which is really the result you're looking for. We looked at 2 programs. One was the ESSER funding, which is that pandemic funding, and the second was the special education cluster. So the first thing that we report in these reports that we're required to report is financial statement findings. So our first finding was there was some bus financing, and everybody knew about the bus financing. It was all approved, no problems there. But when we started the audit, those weren't recorded in the financial statements. And so when we have to make an adjustment of that nature, then our professional standards say, look, there's a control deficiency there that you need to report on. And our recommendation for this is just making sure that before they get, before the records get turned in for audit, that everything is recorded. So pretty straightforward. It wasn't any kind of finding where, oh, nobody knew about these buses. Everybody knew about the buses. It's just that we needed to have them in the books before we got them for audit. So one of those professional standard type things. So that's one. The other financial statement finding that we wanted to bring to your attention was just over student body accounting. And especially in a first year audit for our firm, you'll often find us talking a little bit about student body accounting because it is so, it's such a cash-oriented transaction stream, and oftentimes it's outside of the business office where maybe we have a separate checkbook and some different accounting records. So it's what an auditor would consider to be more of a high-risk area. So we will spend a lot of time looking at those procedures. And so what we noticed were just some general things that we wanted to bring to management and the board's attention of ways to improve the accounting over those, just to make sure everything's complete and accurate. We always have to look at a potential fraud risk when we're looking at student body accounts. That's just part of our audit. That's the way auditors think. And so these are the things that we're recommending in order to strengthen up those internal controls. So things surrounding making sure that the cash on hand, let's say if it's sitting at the high school or at the middle school, it's deposited really quickly. One of the things that we noticed was that there was about $26,000 of cash at the high school that wasn't deposited until June. So it sat there for a really long time, and best practices would say, let's get that into the bank no more than weekly. But if you have a lot on hand, it might even be the day after, 1 or 2 days. So things like that. Talking a little bit about putting some structure around the bank reconciliation process. The bank reconciliation process is very powerful, but sometimes if the person who's reviewing that bank reconciliation is not an accounting professional, we think they might need a little bit of help in terms of, say, a checklist or of some kind. So we've got some recommendations surrounding that. Absolutely, everybody can read them at their leisure. I know management's on top of it, working through a plan of action. But I do want to pause here for a moment and see if anybody has any questions on these first 2 that have to do with financial statements. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to move on. Our next 2 findings are really related to
Brenda,
those. Oh, sorry. Yes, I can now.
Hi. There was one question, I don't think it hit the microphone right, but what is the difference between material weaknesses and significant deficiencies? Is that the right?
Thank you for asking, because that slipped my mind. I usually try to explain that. Yes, so a material weakness is an internal control that, and it's an internal control deficiency that could potentially materially misstate the financial statement. So going back to that financial statement report where I said there's an unmodified opinion, if you had material misstatements within your financial statements that weren't corrected, then our opinion would be modified. So we would say, no, they're not material, they're materially misstated. And so whenever there's a procedure that didn't work or a control that's not in place that could cause something material to be incorrect in the financial statements, we call that a material weakness. And because of the magnitude, when we're looking at that bus adjusting journal entry, it was just a lot of buses. It just buses are big dollar items. And so it would have ended up, had it not been discovered and corrected, the financial statements would have been misstated. So that's why they're at that level. Whereas a significant deficiency is something that would be very unlikely to materially misstate the financial statements, but it does merit attention of the governing body. And you'll find that, when we're talking about student body accounts, in the grand scheme of your financial statements, the student body makes up a small amount of it, but it's important because it's a lot of cash, and it's the one area where really the public is very involved with. They're giving money, they're doing fundraisers, car washes, what have you. And so those are things that are very important to the public. And so a lot of times if we find some areas there, even though we don't believe they're material weaknesses, we'll say, look, we think this is a significant deficiency. And it's really just because we want to call it to your attention. It's something a little bit more important than when we have other comments where we say, hey, this might be a good idea to implement this. This is something we really think is important. Does that help? And I just want to make sure it's okay for me to move on.
We are good. Yes, that did help. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks. All right. So back to specifically about the pandemic funding, the ESSER funding. This is really, this is actually a very small thing. I want to make sure I preface it. It's something that also the Oregon Department of Education noted in their audit. And so as we found it as well, we felt like it should be reported because both found it. But really, this would be something I would consider to be pretty small. It is a requirement. I don't want to say, I don't want to discount that it's a requirement. But what it is when you're using federal funding for construction projects, you are required to make sure that the prevailing wage is paid. And so a lot of what the district did on this was good. In the contract, it said to the contractor, you have to pay prevailing wage. That was all communicated. Those are all really good things. But that last step that they require is to make sure and receive those certified payroll reports to make sure the contractor did what you told them. So this is a pretty small thing, very common the last couple of years as people are using the ESSER funding for construction, because it's not something we're used to having to do when we're constructing with other kinds of public funds. So something that's it's just kind of a little out there, but just a little different with the ESSER funding. So so we did call it out. We know that Oregon Department of Education already knows about it. They did an internal audit as well. And so it's just something that we also had to make sure we were reporting in addition. And so really the recommendation to that is just awareness. It's really just saying, okay, well, if I'm gonna construct something with federal funding, which is going to be rare, especially in the future, but if I do, I need to be aware there might be some other restrictions around that I have to do that I'm not used to doing. So gonna pause there too and see if you have any questions.
Not a question, but just more a clarification. So obviously with the ESSER being federal, I mean, that's subject to Davis-Bacon wages, right? So if we then do anything that uses state money or normal funding, I mean, that would be more subjected to BOLI rates and that prevailing wage structure?
Yeah, it probably would be toward the state. So whatever the state requires in public works contracts, the feds just put it pretty strictly and inserted the requirement that not only do you need to make sure it's happening, you need to get the certified payroll reports. I'm not so sure the state requires those certified payroll reports, but that's probably an area I'm not as familiar with.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions on any of this before we move on? Okay. So, I know, Kara, you're probably going to go over the plan of action later since it has to be part of the resolution. So I don't feel like that's something I need to do, but please correct me if you'd like me to touch base on that in this part.
No, you are good, Brenda. I will go through.
Great. Okay, so there's one more thing. Well, there's a couple more things I have to cover, and I'm going to do them really as quickly as possible. But we also have the state. We also have the state report, and that is this final report here, where we are required to do these things in the bulleted list. So this is page 101 of the paper document if you have it. And there's a bulleted list in the middle of the things that the state of Oregon asks the auditors to look at. These are compliance, they're not financial. And so one of the things that we're required to look at is the budget process. So everything in the budget process looked great. We look at the whole process, make sure all the rules were followed. So the one thing that we noticed was that there were some instances where the district had overexpended its legal spending appropriation. We put a really deep dive of that into the report of the footnote. So if you want more detail there, there's also the budgetary schedule that you can look at that. But we are required to report it in this report. And so that's really the remaining thing. And if you don't mind me moving on, I can talk a little bit about what we call our management comment letter, where we kind of address the budget and really the reason that we think that there were over expenditures. So with your permission, I'll move on to our other letter, if that's okay. All right. So this letter is what we call a management comment letter. It's not internal control deficiencies. It's things that we became aware of during our audit that we think might be helpful for management if we bring to their attention and give them some recommendations. And so one of the things that we were bringing to the board and management's attention is the number of legally budgeted funds that the district had maintained for fiscal year 2023, and that was 17. And that's a lot of funds to juggle. So we did recommend to management that they maybe take a look and see if there's a way to compress into much fewer legally budgeted funds and then just maintain sub funds in the accounting system to track things that you want to track. So we do an audit of, Ben Lapine Schools, which is a really large school district in Central Oregon, and they only have 4 funds. So generally what you'll see is even the largest districts, and it just helps with keeping the over expenditures under control, because if you're trying to manage that many funds, you're continually doing supplemental budgets because you're realizing I have a need here. So if you're trying to run 5 special revenue funds and trying to keep them all straight and then realize, oh, wait, we got a new grant and that's going to go here and we want to spend the money. If you have them all compiled into one special revenue fund, you don't have to do much as long as you've got an appropriation for the whole thing. So if that makes sense, I talked to Kara about it. It's really a management decision, but it will help with the audit as well. The audit would not have as many schedules in it, be much more clear and straightforward. And then it just really, I have found in clients who have the smaller amount of funds versus the ones that we have that have a lot of funds, it's just easier. It's just easier to manage as you go through the year, trying to monitor the budget. I think that was it. That was it. We just wanted to mention that. Any questions on that you'd like me to address?
to the funds. So, I mean, it sounds like best practice would be to reduce the overall number of funds, but is there also kind of a best practice for just your sub underneath all those funds? Obviously, they're going to roll up to that general, or that major fund, but is there like a best practice there? Because I can see where that can also become unwieldy, like if you're parsing everything out into very, minute details. But is there kind of, what's best practice, I guess, within GAP?
Yeah, it's always best practice to try to keep the minimum amount of funds that you can, because again, it gets unwieldy. The 17 that you have, many of them could be underneath. I think, and I'm just kind of remembering here, I didn't see anything in those 17 that I thought shouldn't be tracked. So it's things that are quite commonly tracked. It's just that our accounting software these days can do pretty, miraculous things of tracking that with very little assistance from us. It just kind of happens automatically. So within the, some of our clients, they're tracking 100 different sub things. The larger clients, like they'll have a general fund, but they're tracking maybe 50 things in there. And we're talking about things like making sure you're setting aside reserves for buses, making sure you're setting aside reserves for equipment. All of those things can be in a sub fund so that year after year it rolls through. And if you use it to spend, you can charge it internally, but you don't have to worry about an appropriation. If your appropriation was only 100,000, but the bus cost 110, it doesn't matter because it's in the general fund. It only matters internally where you're realizing, oh, darn, we only had 100 set aside. But it's whatever you think is important to track, especially when you're setting aside things. And then the other piece is for federal grants and state grants. So there is some requirements outside of the entity that you track those. So for example, you have to keep your ESSER funds in separate, right? But you don't have to keep them in a legally budgeted fund. You just have to keep them in a sub fund. So you're always going to have some of that complexity because of the federal money and the state funding sources that you get. Those should all be tracked in sub funds. And for the most part, they are. But a lot of things can go into a special revenue fund and have, 10s, 20s, 50s of sub funds underneath that, tracking the things you're required to track and giving you a little bit more breathing room on appropriations. Any other questions on that? Okay, I didn't hear any, so I'm gonna go on to the very last. We have one letter that's always required. We're gonna go through it really fast because I know you guys have been at this a while tonight. This is really just the letter that we send to the board, and I like to present it. It's something where we are trying as the audit profession to communicate a little bit more with the board. We spend 99% of our time talking with management, but really the board is in charge of the governance of the finance of the organization. So we really like to make sure that we have, number one, that you can contact me anytime, but also that we share with you some important things about the audit. I've shared most of that already, so we're going to breeze through this letter. We do have to comply with ethical requirements. We must be independent. That means that we can't have any kind of relationship with anybody on the board or management. We're really careful about that. One of the things that is new the last couple of years that we've been asked to communicate you is this notion of significant risks. And we've always done our audits that way. We've always focused on the areas that we think are highest risk. But now they're asking us to share that. So it's not a bad thing. Every single organization has significant risk areas. And so we identify those, and let's say we spend most of our time there. So maybe we don't spend as much time on cash because we can go to the bank and they can tell us exactly how much you have in the bank. But these other areas are harder to audit or higher risk. And those are federal and state grant compliance, as you might imagine, student activity revenue, And then whenever there's a new standard, and this one was huge for all school districts, they made everybody change the way they're accounting for cloud-based software. So a lot of work went into that by Kara and her team to just respond to that and make sure that it was accounted for appropriately. They had to go through every software agreement. That's what the standard required. So that was a biggie, very high risk this year, and something that I know caused a lot of wear and tear on finance teams across the state. Let's see. Talks a little bit about one of the things that, on those full accrual statements, there are estimates. One of the most sensitive estimates and the biggest estimates is the district's share of that unfunded pension liability that you'll see on one of the sets of statements. That, of course, is estimated by an actuary, changes a lot, often changes particularly with market fluxes. So that number is always kind of getting bigger, getting smaller, mostly getting bigger. So that's an estimate that's involved on there. We had no significant unusual transactions that were identified. We didn't identify in the course of our audit any instances of fraud. No difficulties. Kara and her team were extremely helpful. First year audits are really hard, and it's hard for us and it's hard for them. So we all got through it. I know it took a little bit more time. Most of that was due to the software standard. It was just a really huge thing to have to do, that software standard. We did have a couple misstatements that we brought to management's attention and then had them correct. Some of these were related to things from the prior year. And as we went through and did some things, we just said, oh, well, we think that this should have been accounted for differently. It had to do with a tax appeal. We did finally get a hold of the county and just say, really, is this tax appeal money owed? And they had said, oh, sorry, that was actually resolved in 21. So a couple of things that we had to do there. And then no disagreements with management. And that's about it. Everything else I think I covered for the most part. Does anybody have any questions? That's my last letter. So now it's just questions, and I can let you go.
How about now?
I can hear you.
Yeah, now she can. And we're just, yeah, we love, that's how it goes. Thank you. I don't see anyone has any more questions, Brenda.
All right. Well, thank you for allowing me to be on Zoom. I had some travel plans that unfortunately interfered, but hope to be back next year in person. And yeah, so thanks to everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brenda.
Bye.
Bye. So I will move into the corrective action plan. I'll make a few comments. Brenda and her group, they were really great to work with. It was a first audit. Some of the best practices you could argue, just as a general rule, is that you could switch up your auditor every 3 to 4 years, and you would have a lot more different reviews, and people look at different things differently. The audit firms have different levels that they go into. So it was, she asked a lot of great questions. We went through a lot of information, did a lot of the groundwork. So I would anticipate bringing them back. They were great to work with, had great comments. Just on a note, going through software audits or software agreements is quite painful, but it did happen. Couple of comments that she had made just for context. I feel like I'm ringing. Am I okay? Okay. It's okay. So a couple of comments, the bus payments that they're referring to, which is all about Sherman County. You know, we have those 5 buses. Those bus payments were booked, so the staff just booked the payments, but also what needed to be booked is there's a perceived revenue from those loan agreements, and then booking the depreciable value of the buses, which that was the piece that was missed, is those 2 sections. Historically, and Brenda and I have talked about this, we have always relied on our auditors to book all of our depreciable equipment and all of the equipment we bring in. It's actually not on our books. It's kept separately in the financial statements. And this would kind of go along with that concept, so that's how we viewed it, but it is something that we probably need to start looking at, is booking our own equipment and doing more of that work on our end. They still took that over and did that. It was great. There was no issue with that. So that was the technicality with that. The particular issue with prevailing wage, and you did kind of hit on that, is the difference that I wasn't actually aware of is there is a state limit of prevailing wage, which is 50,000. So it is the baseline that I used when doing that contract. We still required them to make sure they were doing prevailing wage, but it was under 50,000. So we didn't realize we needed to look at the payroll reports. So it's something we're aware of, but it didn't reach that limit that the state hits. So that was the technicality that also went there. So while it was okay, it was not okay because we didn't go back and do the certified payroll reports. And historically, every place I've been, we don't usually use federal funds to do construction projects unless they're in the millions of dollars. So it's not a question whether you have to do that particular piece. So that was a good thing to learn. We did meet with ODE today to finalize what that is. So we have to go back to the particular contractor we used, and it was for the concrete pavement in the pavilion area. And we have to go look at the certified payroll reports and actually go back and just verify that was actually completed. So that created a 2-fold audit recommendation. So it's part of what we put in our process. The other comment is ASB accounts. They are always high risk areas anywhere you go when you have those particular funds, especially if you have cash flow and things like that. So we are working on we'll work with our principals, and she had a good perspective. It was a little bit different, like, even though, not to talk about the principals back there, but they're all very qualified, very smart people. They don't deal with finances in and out. So one of her comments is maybe someone who's, even though the principals need to look at it, they need to verify, hey, we're following all the rules. Maybe we need finance people actually doing that level of review and making sure when little sub accounts are under ASB accounts, that those have met all the right steps to meet that level. So one of the things that we've also been doing is looking at other districts and how their internal control policies relate to that. And we will create a new internal control policy as it relates to ASB accounts, do more review, but we have we are hiring another person to help with the business office, partially with teaching and learning, but the business office that will help alleviate some of that workload, because part of the issue is just having enough staff to do all that work. Internal controls are great as long as you have it separated in duties among different people, and that you have the people to actually do all those controls when you have the day-to-day work you have to get done. So there's my soapbox. We will be bringing in another person. That will be great. So the capacity should free up a little bit and have that. Having said all that, the requirement of the state is for the Secretary of State us to actually do a formal plan of action. And so what we have included in here, and I'll just go to the sheet, which is our sheet. There's a little summary of what our actions will be, and then we will report again next year. How did we follow up on this and how did it go? So for the first finding is the booking of assets and the loan financing. That's the bus payment that she was referring to. We did already make all those adjustments. We made the statements in compliance with GAAP. We understand that what we need to do in the future to make those loan payments. And it's the only loan payment we have as the district at this point. And so it's easy to put that in a control process at the end of the year. Hey, did you book the bus payment? Did you also book the, I call it perceived revenue because it's not really real, so it makes me giggle. But and then the depreciable equipment. So we have that in our end of year check process. The other one is ASB accounts. Again, we'll do a full process review. We'll do an internal review in the business office and then propose some changes to superintendent and principals by May 1st is our goal. So have a lot to work to do, but we think we can do that because one of the staff is already working on that pretty diligently. The N2, again, it's completed. We'll make sure we will be bringing a policy after we finalize some revisions. We have some proposed policies just to put in place. When you use federal money, it doesn't matter how much the limit is. Here's the process you have to go through, which requires that certified payroll report, just so whether it's me or anybody else in this position, they understand, the federal funds, $1, 50,000, doesn't matter. You have to look at those reports. So that would be our proposal. Any questions?
I'll move to accept the audit report and the corrective action plan as presented.
Motion by Director Nelson, seconded by Director Lopez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Abstain? Ayes have it. Motion passes. Thanks, Kara. Next, we have the superintendent report. I'll turn it over to Dr. Bernal.
Thank you. I will be brief as I know we have still a lot of business to get through tonight. I provided you earlier in the week just an update on progress towards goals and shared that with all of you. That will be included as part of the record of tonight's meeting. I would just say that everything is in progress. I provided you several success indicators of the progress. The only thing I would point out is that under goal 2, which is monitoring our strategic plan priorities, as we did in year 1, I think we probably bit off more than we could chew. And once school gets rolling, we realize just how much work we have to do. So there's a couple targets that we targeted for this year that we may not even get to start, but I'm going to work on seeing if we can push those along.
Right, thank you. Next, we have Shannon Brennan from TLA.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Before I share about the curriculum postponement, I just want to reiterate something that Cindy emailed you earlier this week, and just let you know that we had a really, the early literacy initiative team had a really wonderful experience at the CCIRA conference earlier this month. And I just want to reiterate our gratitude for that opportunity. Hopefully you got an email that Cindy was able to forward from the whole team. The curricular postponement that I am here to talk to you about tonight is for ELP and science. So that's the English language proficiency, curricular adoption, and the science adoption. As you may know, the state of Oregon puts forth a timeline for curricular adoptions, and it's on a 7-year cycle. We've been delayed for a couple years, as far as I know. I don't know too much history back before ELA, but the English language arts adoption was delayed. The math adoption is delayed this year. I did have a meeting with ODE last week to just talk about our where we're at in adoptions and see how we can move forward. And what I'm bringing you tonight is all based on the recommendation that I had that I got when I met with them last week. The reason that I was a little alarmed is when I went to first dig into this, the website form that you have to fill out for ODE says that you cannot have a delay in curricular adoptions because of a previous delay. And I was assured that while that language seems very, very rigid, districts continue to utilize a 2-year timeline or the postponement option in multiple areas of curricular adoptions. So do you want me to share my screen like Brenda did so the audience can see this as well? Okay. I can't. Okay, I hope you're looking at this slideshow. I can't see. I've lost you on my screen, but the English language proficiency, the ELP adoption cycle, should have been started in 22, and it would go until 2029. One of the things that I was assured of, so just to go back, in 2022, North Wasco did not apply for the postponement. And at the same time, we have 2 years to complete the adoption postponement. And so we just have to be able to adopt materials by the fall of 2024, which is a very quick turnaround, but our ELD teachers are very motivated to make sure that we get a program adopted. And so I think we can still make it happen, but this is more of a formality to acknowledge that we are delaying the adoption a bit. So we don't have materials for secondary. Our elementary is using systematic ELD for language learners that are earlier in their language acquisition. And then we have additional classroom supports, geodes and like assistance within the classroom for elementary, but secondary does not have any materials that they've been using. This delay is, a result of COVID and staff turnover. We're submitting the request to delay now, and that falls within the 2-year period to maintain compliance. And we would move really fast to adopt English language proficiency materials for the fall of 2024. I can't see you at the moment, but if there are any questions, please just interrupt me. The science adoption cycle, our last adoption would be up in 2024, this school year. And so we are asking to postpone the adoption until next year. There's quite a variety in what's used at different grade levels and different classrooms. So it's pretty inconsistent. But again, this is a result of delaying previous curricular adoptions. And then one of the things that I spoke with ODE about was just, like, how do we get out of this cycle of constantly delaying adoptions and actually get back on track? And the recommendation was that we submit a postponement for ELP, not ELD, and science. And then submitting the postponement keeps us in compliance. And then we were encouraged to proactively work on an instructional materials action plan, so we do not go into corrective action. And that gives us 5 years to get back on track with all of our curricular adoptions. with some additional support from ODE. And so that is something that we would look into making happen for next school year, that we would get on that, start an action plan with ODE. But for now, the first step in all of this is to submit the postponement. And we need to make sure that we've done everything that we need to do in communication with you, and that you also support everything to get back in compliance. Well, we're not out of compliance, but to stay in compliance.
Shannon, have you had the opportunity to look into that action plan at all? Do you know what that looks like for us going forward?
I don't know too much, but I have some notes from what I was told in our meeting, in my meeting with ODE. And really it's some of the considerations, is one is always financial. Two is capacity of a very small department, the teaching, learning, and assessment department, to be able to support all of these curricular adoptions. And so we would have some additional, not necessarily personnel, but just extra support. Kind of the way I saw it was a lot like what our stewards are doing with our intensive program, and how they're supporting us in a lot of that work. That we would have that direct support from ODE, and we wouldn't just be kind of like all out on our own. But no, I haven't looked into it more than the little bit that we had in our conversation. And that's not something that we have to do. It was just a suggestion.
Director Nelson, seconded by Director Richardson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Any abstain? Ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Now we have the Chief Financial Officer's report. Kara?
Included in your packet in this time, we took everything, posted in the paper, the gremlins at the newspaper, let it go this time. This is to help clean up some fund areas. And just to reference back, one of the things that Brenda had said, and I made a note, and I'm sorry I didn't mention it, but we are changing our fund structure, that what you will actually approve for a budget level will be at the highest level. So having said that, there are some funds that are currently designated as special revenue funds that when you look deeper into the classification, it really comes from the general fund. So they should be general fund funds, but so we'll make some of those adjustments. We'll explain those. We have them all mapped out and ready to go, but you will see when the budget's adopted that it'll just have a 100 and then a 200 and a 300. And then we will be adopting a new fund. We will have 400 because it's capital projects, but we also will have a new 600 fund because Sherman County really is a fee-for-service fund. And we need to appropriately classify that before they want us to appropriately classify it. So we'll move that from like a local revenue fund to a fee-for-service fund. So you'll see that next time. In having said that, all the adjustments that you make, if you look back, good or bad, it's unusual for me because I've always had 3 weeks to clean up a fiscal year end and close everything, but school districts have 4-5 months if you really want to push it. So in that amount of time, there's a lot of different things that can come in and come on your books and affect it. But unless you make resolutions or changes by June 30th, you are stuck with whatever happens after that, which can be a lot. So there's also some pros and cons to look at a modified cash basis instead of what we're doing. So some options we'll discuss with Brenda, but having said that, we still have to do supplemental budget hearings and still hoping for this document to be approved. The resolution number technically is, and I don't have it on this document, but it's 23-24-03. Posted in the paper, did not, again, as you said, did not have any comments, and I'm hoping for that approval so we can correct some of our budget areas.
All right, I'll accept the motion for the supplemental budget as presented.
Chair, I'll motion to approve the resolution for the supplemental budget as presented.
Right. Motion by Director Vaught, seconded by Director Aparicio. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Any abstain? Ayes have it. Motion passes.
Okay, I'll fly right into the next thing. And this next particular thing is for our Chenoweth seismic grant proposal. We bid out for the CMGC contract. We had 2 bids on that. The committee met, went over it. We still have a little more time. February 29th is technically when either one or both of those parties could contest the results. I haven't heard any feedback yet, so assuming there is no contested results, we would like to move forward with Griffin Construction. I included the committee's overall score. Griffin Construction did score 6.25 points out of 100 higher. They were at 95.25. The other contractor, PNC Construction, which is actually out of Portland. Griffin has a local office in the Dalles, but primarily out of Prineville. So a little more local, but did score higher. We felt comfortable with them because we had used them at the Kurtz Gym project, had good success with them, and are hoping to move forward and have approval of moving ahead with their contract.
I move to approve the Griffin. Oh, okay.
Just real quick, just one clarification on the letter. I just want to make sure we revise, and Michael Springston was unable to participate that day, but he's listed as one of the scoring members. So I just wanted to make sure we include that revision.
Yes, well, good point. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'll move to approve the Griffin Construction to provide construction management general contractor services for the seismic rehabilitation of Chenoweth Elementary as described in the district's RFP, and to authorize the administration to negotiate and execute a contract with the firm.
Right. Motion by Director Nelson, seconded by Director Lopez. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Any abstain? Ayes have it. Motion passes.
Okay, I'll move quickly through. I know time is not on our side, but I'll move quickly through financial statements. Just a general statement. We're going to work this next month at really making sure we have everything in the books. We have frozen what we can as far as expenditures. It looks like things are a healthy balance right now. General fund is at 6.4, and that is before the state school fund double payment came in on February. But if you think about it, not only do we have to get through June 30th, but all of the staff that are school year-round staff also get paid in July and August out of this fiscal year. So there's a lot of things that still have to come out of these numbers. I'm still very concerned that our ending balance is not going to look great. I am reviewing, and I think we're eligible, but the TANS loan, which is the short-term borrowing loan program, and that's mostly a cash flow issue, but I am still going to go through that process, and if by next month we're able to qualify, we go through with Piper Sandler and some of the groups to make sure that there's a whole formula you have to go through. So I'm still going to lobby that we do that, just in the event that we don't want to end up in a situation where we actually don't have the money to pay our bills. That's just never good as a finance person. That's the worst case scenario, right? So quickly, I can just highlight a few things. We did, I think I already said it to you verbally, but I wanted to make sure it was written as well. The Sodexo contract was renewed through the end of June at a reduced rate to account for we took over management of our own staff. So far that's working out. We still will receive a credit for October, November, December. We're just working out what that might be because we did still have some services with them, but it wasn't the full complement. So we will get a smaller credit, and you'll see that nutrition fund will bop up a little bit. It did move down to 135,000, but it's still a healthy balance. The facilities end, I'm just trying to keep everyone updated on the big projects we are working on. The Renew America Schools grant. The concern I would have is twofold. One, we already applied. We do have feedback, which is great, and so we will maneuver our application to be more competitive. One of the things is being a little more innovative. So how can we be more innovative in the energy world? So can we put in some solar energy or something like that that makes us look like we're doing more cutting edge things. In addition, I am concerned because if you go out and look at the reports, it looks like North Wasco already got awarded a Renew America Schools grant. We didn't, Mosier did, which is great for them. I just don't want it to reflect on us actually being able to get a grant, so we want to have the best application we can. We are still working with Energy Trust Oregon. I think it will refine it and do as good as we can and hope that we score high enough. The other thing, just keeping everyone updated, Klein Engineering, we are still working with them. You know, the board some time ago had already authorized the splitting of the veterans home property, the property by veterans home. We are still working on the surveying of what the best split is, and then we have to take it to the planning department before we can put that on the market to be sold. So still working on that. They're in process, and we're on a list that they're working through. So not like they haven't been positive to work with. It just takes time. The numbers still look okay, but again, I'll keep refining those for next month. Is there any really quick questions? I kind of went through that very quickly. I know y'all love to read these. Okay. The other thing would be enrollment. Yay, the good news is we moved up a whole 9, which is better than moving the other way. So we'll take it. We're still doing better than last year. So I always look at what June had, and we're 85 ahead of last year. And a lot of school districts are still suffering from declining enrollment. So that's a positive thing for us. So I think still stay focused on that and keep moving. But any questions on enrollment that I can answer? That was really quick. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Kara. Next, we have the board attorney's report. Jason? Okay. Okay, as per our board operating protocol, we still have quite a few things to get through, so I'll leave it up to the board whether we continue, take a break, move some items to the next board meeting. What's everyone think?
Nobody needs a break.
Continue? All right, we'll continue on then. Next, we have board direction on the complaint from January 15th.
I'd like to make a motion, Chair. I move that the board adopt its statement from the January 25th, 2024 board meeting as the board's decision with regard to the complaint filed with the district on January 15th regarding board policy BDDH.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Director Richardson, seconded by Director Nelson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Any abstain? Ayes have it, motion passes. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Bernal for Innovation Academy status.
Yeah, thank you, Board. As you'll recall, Principal Schultes came to you all, I believe it was back in December, to discuss that we wanted to go ahead and move forward with applying for Alt Ed status for Innovations Academy and the benefits of doing that work. We have our application ready to go. Part of submission of our application is to have a copy of draft minutes that the application was presented and approved by the board. So we are seeking your approval tonight, and then Principal Schultes can move forward with submitting that application.
Chair, I'll move to approve the Innovations Academy program status change for ODE as presented.
Motion by Director Aparicio, seconded by Director Richardson. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Any abstain? Ayes have it, motion passes. Next, we have approval for non-resident release and non-resident acceptance.
Yep. So policy JECB, which is admission of non-resident students, requires that the board determine district transfers to and from the district for the following school year annually by March 1st. If the school board decides to open slots for transfer requests, the district is required to provide written notification to families by May 1st. We are proposing 30 non-resident students, 30 resident students as the in and out. This is the same as last year. The numbers have not changed.
I'll make the motion, Chair. Okay. I wish to move to motion to grant consent for up to 30 non-resident students to attend school in the North Wasco County School District starting in the 2024-2025 school year, and a motion to grant consent for up to 30 resident students to be released to attend another school district in Oregon starting the 2024-2025 school year, with the understanding that all consent is subject to district policy and administrative rule.
Right. Motion by Director Richardson, seconded by Director Aparicio. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Any abstain? Ayes have it, motion passes. All right, next, the school calendar.
Yeah. So we've had quite the winter this year, and we have missed we've had 7 snow days, 2 late starts. The administration met with our union partners as we discussed the remainder of the school year, and also did our calculations in terms of how, if and when and where we were short. So there's a couple of provisions that we'll be asking you to take action tonight to help us with recapturing some of our instructional minutes, but we are asking to readopt the 23-24 school calendar. The changes include that March 8th, which was supposed to be a non-student day, teacher work day for grading purposes, because trimester 2 was supposed to end on March 7th, will now be a regular school day for K-12. March 15th would then be the new teacher work day. The end of trimester 2 would be pushed to March 14th. May 24th, which was supposed to be a conference comp day in May, would be a regular school day for our K-12 students. And then for grades 9 and 12, this would just impact TDHS. We are looking at our early release Wednesdays in trimester 3, with the exception of April 24th and May 22nd, to then become full days. This would then mean that trimester 2 became 58 school days and trimester 3 would have 54 days.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to readopt the 2023 to 2024 school calendar as presented.
Motion by Director Nelson, seconded by Director Lopez. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Any abstain? Okay. Ayes have it. Motion passes. Next, the approval for the 30 hours.
Yep. So we are requesting approval for us to use up to 30 hours of conference time and 30 hours of professional learning time to be included in our instructional minutes calculations for the 23-24 school year. This is allowable by OAR 581-022-2320. Which says, upon approval by the local school board, a district may include in its calculation of instructional time required by subsection 1 of this rule the following: up to 30 hours for staff professional development, up to 30 hours for parent-teacher conferences.
I'll entertain a motion for that.
I have a question first.
Okay.
Dr. Bernal, where do these 30 hours get placed?
They don't get placed, they just, the OAR regulation allows us to count those towards instructional hours. And used as part of like our overall total calculation.
Okay. Yeah. And where is this counting happening? Sorry.
Say again?
What are we counting?
The number of required instructional hours.
Okay. Sorry, I'm still lost.
So these 30 hours are needed for the calendar to work? Is that right?
We're requesting to use some of those hours to recapture some instructional time, which is allowable under the OAR.
Understanding. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'll move to approve the request for approval up to 30 hours of conference time and up to 30 hours of professional learning time in the instructional minutes calculations as provided by OAR 581-022-2320 as presented.
Do you have a second? Motion by Director Nelson, seconded by Director Aparicio. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Any abstain? Ayes have it, motion passes. And the next action item is district request to submit a waiver.
So recently, the State Board of Education approved a temporary rule amendment to OAR 581-002-0035 due to the emergency school closures for adverse weather conditions that many school districts experienced across the state of Oregon. Districts may submit a waiver to include in its calculation of instructional time up to 14 hours for missed instructional time due to emergency school closures for adverse weather conditions. part of the waiver has to include board approval and a copy of the draft minutes.
Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the district's request to submit a waiver to include in its calculation of instructional time up to 14 hours for missed instructional time due to emergency school closures for adverse weather conditions. That's temporary rule amendment to OAR 581-002-0035.
Right. Motion by Director Nelson, seconded by Director Lopez. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Any abstain? Ayes have it. Motion passes. Okay, next up we have first reading on school board policies. These are information only. Policy GCBDB/GDBDB, early return to work. The changes to these policies, early return to work, is to align with Equal Employment Opportunities Commission guidance. Any questions on that one?
What's the recommended for the bracketed text in that middle paragraph? Will versus may.
Well, I'm going to review that with our HR department, and we'll come back to you with the recommendation.
For the next reading?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Next, we have policy IGAI, a new Oregon Administrative Rule 581-021-0593 requires public education providers, which include school districts, public charter schools, and education service districts, to provide information on menstrual health and must include this information in their health and sexuality education. As a result, new language has been added to policy IGAI. Any comments on that one? Okay, we'll move on to policy JHC, student health services requirements. New language has been added to policy JHC, which refers to existing rules related to school nursing services and responsibilities. Any questions or comments on that one? Okay. Move on to policy CB. With passage of Senate Bill 1521 in 2022, there are new provisions in law to consider when issuing a superintendent's contract and when school district boards are making decisions related to the operations of the district. Any questions on that? Policy CPA, House Bill 2001, changed the laws regarding regulations in staff for teachers. This law also changed the definition of teacher to be used in the layoff process, now ORS 342.120. This change requires districts to consider cultural or linguistic expertise when implementing a reduction in staff. Any comments or questions on that one? All right, next we have policy DBEA on budget committees. Senate Bill 732 was passed in 2021. Legislative session requiring districts to establish an educational equality advisory committee. This bill, or the bill, outlines the responsibilities and makeup of the committee. For districts with an ADM over 10,000, the committee must convene no later than September 2022. For districts with an ADM of 10,000 or less, the committee must convene no later than September 15th, 2025. For at least one member of the Education Equity Committee, Advisory Committee, needs to be appointed to the Budget Committee. This will happen when a position becomes open. It does not establish an additional Budget Committee member. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, and for information only, policy CPA-AR. Any comments on that? And that moves us to comments from the audience about agenda and non-agenda items. The board will accept public comments for the February 22nd, 2024 meeting. The board is committed to the public comment process and will consider all public comment seriously. Anyone wishing to sign up to speak during public comments section of the agenda shall follow board policy BDDH, public participation in board meetings, which states, a person speaking during the designated portion of the agenda for public comment may offer objective criticism of district operation and programs. The board will not hear comments regarding any individual staff member, district staff member. The board chair will direct the visitor to the procedures in board policy KL, complaints for consideration of a legitimate complaint involving a staff member. Accommodation involving a staff member should be sent to the superintendent, who will forward it to the employee or to the employee, a supervisor, and the board. Sign up to speak at the meeting. You can sign up using the form available for those wishing to speak at the school board in person. Comments will follow district policy with up to 3 minutes allotted per person to speak. Written comments can be sent to or emailed to publiccomments@northwasco.k12.or.us. The deadline for these comments is the Wednesday before the board meeting by 4 p.m. Public comments submitted after that deadline will be included in the next regular school board meeting. For those wishing to make a public comment virtually, send an email to Cindy Miller at publiccomments@northwasco.k12.us no later than Wednesday before the board meeting, no later than 4 p.m. with your name, screen name, phone number you will be joining the meeting with. You'll receive a link to the meeting and will be placed in a waiting room until your name is called. Comments are again limited to 3 minutes. So we have 2 tonight. First up is Jamie Preston.
Whew, that was difficult. I think that we should have taco trucks and naps. Thank you. My name is Jamie Preston. I'm a mother of 4 boys, age range from 21 to 13. So I have a current student in the Dalles Middle School. We've had attended many conferences. We've walked these halls for many, many years, and have had some visits to the principal's office. I want to first appreciate our teachers and want to give particular appreciation to the support and positive leadership of the current principal. Parents may expect a magic wand, and at times I know our teachers wish they had one. I want to say that your efforts are not unnoticed. We see your heart, your creativity, and your will to help us raise productive and happy citizens. In the last 2 years, I have seen the leadership here, the culture here at this school embody what I want to see and the expectations that I have. It's not a wand, but it's respect, accountability, inclusiveness, bad behavior rather than bad children. I've never seen a more visible leadership, principal, staff, teachers, happy, standing in front of the school, inviting, talking to kids. They know their names. Principal, I'm just so proud that we have been able to retain a staff member like this. I can see the empowered teaching staff. There is definitive change here at the Dalles Middle School. If you're not hearing the same thing from your board seat, I would encourage what I call skip level supervision. Allow a direct investigation into the culture as it is now. Walk the halls. Allow the teachers to speak anonymously and see what I see. See what thankfully our last child has experienced and is experiencing. We are just so appreciative of the staff here. They have a large mountain to climb, and you owe it to us and to the teachers here to support the principal's efforts and theirs. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Shelley Anslinger.
Hello. My name is Shelley Anslinger, as he said, and I have 2 young children in elementary age. And I actually want to speak about curriculum and curriculum teaching and learning assistance, things like that. So I am actually in the school every week. I go into each of my kids' classes 1 day a week, so I see a lot. I ask their teachers what they're reading. I like to see, I got to look at the new math curriculum. And today I got books for the next reading curriculum module that's coming up for my 2nd grader. And I was alarmed because it was inappropriate. There were pictures in there that I would not read that book to my child. There were signs in there. I did not feel like it was appropriate. And so I said to the teacher that I had some concerns about it and asked her where I take those concerns. And I want to also say my daughter's teacher is amazing. She's doing a great job. She has lots of behavior students in her class, and my daughter is still thriving and learning this year. So I just want to get that out there first. And then I was told also that with this curriculum, they don't even have enough books for the class. So she's supposed to teach this curriculum to 2nd graders, which I personally feel is not appropriate. And I know that's my personal feeling for my kids. But she doesn't have enough books for them. And the level of the books is above a lot of the students in the class. And my daughter is one of the higher level readers in the class, and she would struggle with some of these books. So I said, who do I talk to about this? And I was told that I can tell the principal, which is great. I've had great experiences with the principal. And then I said, and who do I go, and then who does it go to after that? And I was told the curriculum instructor. And I was informed that that is now a remote job part of the time. And that was concerning to me. So what I'm actually here for today is that I know that we are looking at contract extensions and budgets and things like that. And I would like you guys to look at the job of our curriculum instructor. And I don't think that should be a remote job. They need to be able to come into the classroom. They need to be able to see how the students are doing, support the teachers, and see what the outcome is. Because especially as we're going to be implementing new curriculum, it sounds like not right away, because some of them are postponed, but we are looking at a new math curriculum. We do have this writing curriculum that's coming. And we want to see how the students are doing now with their 2nd year in it. So that is my concern. I just ask as a concerned parent in the school board, I also have heard that as a remote job, that funds are being used then to help with transportation. And that again is concerning to me because classes are being reduced. Teachers are being told that they don't have money for other things. So I just feel like the money needs to go to the students. It needs to go to the books for their classrooms for what they're gonna have to teach. It needs to go to looking for more teachers so we don't have these big classes that have multiple behavior issues in them. So that's my concern. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thanks everyone for coming to our meeting and spending this time with us. And with that, I will adjourn this meeting.